Let's talk about artificial intelligence and specifically generative AI. I was at a meeting a few weeks ago, and a person with a $100 million company said 90% of my marketing group is gone. I'm upskilling them or reskilling them because we're using AI.
You're training the machine to take the place of where you have stifled the innovation, the creativity, and the ingenuity.
How do you think AI can create more leaders? Welcome to the Illuminating Wisdom podcast. I'm your host, Marcia Narayan Weldon, and I'm a lawyer, business strategist, corporate trainer, and executive coach. Each week, I'm going to bring you my favorite entrepreneurs, thought leaders, legal professionals, and other coaches who will inspire, educate, and empower you. So, Telina, I am so happy to have you here today because you are a powerhouse, as people learned from the introduction. So, my first question, with all that you do, is work-life balance a complete myth? Because you must have 27 hours in a day that most of us don't have. How do you balance it all? You have children, you have businesses, you're a speaker, you do so much. And I know one of the things that people are going to listen to, especially when they hear everything else you do, is how does she do all that? How can I get some of that? So what are your secrets? And do you believe in work-life balance? Because I don't even know that it actually exists, to be perfectly honest.
Actually, it does. I actually, in my learning institute, we actually have a class that we teach on work-life balance. So it's funny that you asked that because I've actually trained on work-life balance, and especially be having to juggle many things at all the time, and multitasking, really creating a synergistic balance. And so I'm really keen on creating boundaries. I think that's a huge thing for me, is boundaries, and not allowing things to impede on them. I know things happen where they're wild cards, right, or what have you, but really just being really conscious about not letting those outside activities affect the regular things that we have going on in our lives. Does that mean that I can't be spontaneous? Of course not. I can totally be spontaneous, but I allow myself wiggle room. And so one of the little key things I train is planning for the unexpected. And people say, well, how the heck do you plan for the unexpected? It is, you definitely can do it. It is a thing. And so how I do it is I make sure that since I have an itemized schedule, that I have blocks of time throughout my schedule that says unexpected, right? And what I do is I really analyze how many hours am I truly having unexpected events happening per week, because I plan for the week. So for me, on average, my unexpected events can total to like 5 to 7 hours a week. That's a lot of time, right? And that's but you looked at, you said, well, you have so much going on. Well, so much going on, unexpected things can arise, right? So I usually try to block out 5 to 7 hours every week that are just floating, right? And so if an unexpected event comes in, I'm able to move those things that I would have secured at a certain time slot, fill it with an unexpected event, and then shift it over to where the unexpected event truly was before. So therefore, I'm still getting things done. I'm still managing, but I'm still accounting for things that I probably didn't plan for. Now, to be honest, has there ever been a time where it went over 5 to 7 hours? Of course there has been. But you know what? Nothing in life is perfect, right? So we do our best to adjust and create moments to where we can deal with those things that change our realms on a constant basis. Life is nothing but an evolutionary process, right? And I'm not talking about evolution, I'm talking about change, right? So in managing change is dealing with work-life balance, is dealing with time management, it's dealing with approaches, it's dealing with planning, process, procedural things that we need to do on a regular basis. I hope I answered your question.
Super helpful. And on this podcast, we have people that are lawyers, that are entrepreneurs, that are all kinds of people listening in, but everybody has an issue with time, no matter what you do. So what you said, I think, I'm playing devil's advocate. I think what you said is fantastic when you run things. What if you don't run things? How can you plan for the unexpected? Because I would imagine you're able to do most of the time, hey, look, that 1 o'clock meeting, I've got to move it to 3 o'clock because something has happened. What would you say to the person who's listening that says, I just don't have that kind of flexibility? Is there another time management tip that you have that anyone, or project management tip that you have that anybody could adopt as soon as they get off the line listening today?
So hilarious enough as it may seem, even in the most strictest environments, I worked with government, and that you can't get any more strict with time than that, right? But there is a system called hierarchy in place for a reason. Right. So even for my subordinates and even for my peers or people that are actually following me, they have the capability of actually communicating. So I think communication is key, because if you don't speak up and you don't say anything, and you just kind of
Right.
stay in the same cyclical behavior, no one will ever think anything of the difference, right? They won't know. So they'll assume that you have all the time in the world to complete the tasks that have been identified there. However, if you're having challenges, that is where communication is key. Now, somebody could say, well, what if my boss isn't listening to me? Well, then what you
Hmm.
do is you prove your perspective. So I've trained individuals that are in that type of hierarchical standard where maybe they're not the decision maker, but they're making
Right.
just as much impact, right? So what I say is, I say, okay, well, look at your schedule equally. And then you sit down and you make an appointment with your supervisor or whomever it is that you report to and say, listen, I want to kind of go over the items that I'm going through. And then you say, it's not that I can't handle these items, but maybe I can't handle them all at once. So let's kind of look at how I evaluate the time that I've actually put into these items, right? And what does that equate to? You have a 40-hour work week, but if you're working 60 hours a week and within a 40-hour work week, there might be a deficit somewhere that may have nothing to do with you. It may be departmental, it may be lack of staff, it may be a couple of things. And if you're challenged with a company that may not have the resources to hire a new person, more so than cross training becomes extremely important, right? Having other people that are around you that can do peer-to-peer training to be able to fill in deficits
Hmm.
when needed, so therefore you can continue on, because at the end of the day, it really isn't about us as an individual, as more so it is about the organization's success. The viability of the organization is what allows us to have the jobs. It allows us to have those positions. It allows us to be able to have the lifestyles that we lead. So in order for us to work synergetically together, we need to make sure that the health and wellness of the organization, which is the infrastructure, is solid. And the only way to make sure that happens is not by just having a org chart or organizational chart, but also having streamlined communication for effectiveness and impact.
That is so great because I work with so many people who are afraid to say that they can't get something done. And most leaders will just, if you just tell me, we can reprioritize. And I always tell
Right.
people, just say, look, I've got all these things to do, and you can't necessarily the priorities based on, okay, Talina's the boss, so obviously her thing has to go first, because it may not have to go first.
It may
But
not be.
if you don't ask your boss, hey, can you help me reprioritize this? Then you're in a world of hurt because you're trying to figure it out, and then nobody is happy. So
And
you
then
mentioned
that's
it.
where
Oh, please.
mess ups happen, right? So that's where then now you're asking for the wrath to come upon you, because if it doesn't get completed and you said nothing about it, and you
Exactly.
continued on with the behavior knowing that it was going to have an end result of a negative without prepping the rest of the team, because remembering, an organization is a team. No matter
Hmm.
how stringent an individual or leader may be, they are only one part of the unit of the team. And the ultimate goal, I say this again, is the health and wellness of the organization. People will say, well, it's not me. Of course, you're a part of the health and wellness of the
Right.
organization.
Right.
But if the organization is not doing what it needs to do, there can be no you.
Absolutely.
So,
And you talked about the organization. And speaking of which, you've been in business for yourself for quite some time. What made you decide to go into business? And your business is helping other business. And I gave a little bit about it in the introduction, but tell us a little bit about what the business is, who you serve, and why you chose that. What's the gap you were trying to fill when you started your business?
so I'm a woman of God, right? And I'm gonna just leave it there. Like, and so my prayer, my mantra, whatever you want to call it, was saying, hey, listen, I want to have a wider reach to be able to assist. I'm a servant leader. Most leaders are servant leaders, whether they want to admit to it or not, because they are serving a greater cause, a greater good, to do something, right? So I said, okay, well, if I'm serving, I was in C-suite and executive positions the majority of my career, both in corporate and in a nonprofit. I've sat in both seats. I've seen it. I've sat on boards. And so
Mm-hmm.
I know that the reach that I had, even though it was impactful, was very limited. I wanted something. When I prayed, I said, I want to be able to expand and be able to create a new kind of culture globally. And so in order to have a global impact, it's not something that you usually do underneath one roof. You usually do it underneath multiple roofs, right? And so I'm B2B. I'm also C-suite. I also deal with leaders, but I also deal with my learning institute also focuses on the people that are there in the infrastructure that are working too. So we have executive and leadership, trainings. We have professional development trainings. We have soft skill trainings. We even dabble in some of the Microsoft of being able to actually help people become well-rounded in their approach. So why did I get into what I'm doing? Well, I know that I had outgrown my ceiling. And, and I have challenges by birth, just period, that some other people may not even have. And, I have to live my truth. I'm a brown girl over here. I'm a leader and what have you. And I live in a really predominantly male driven environment. And I love my male counterparts. It's not that I'm not hating on them at all, but I'm living a truth. And so, therefore, me climbing the ladder has been a lot harder, and succeeding and actually obtaining and those goals that I seek to do of bringing and unifying human beings together. And so, in order for me to do that, I need to step out. I need to step out on faith and have a little bit of faith. I need to take all of those tools and resources that I have gathered over the year, the knowledge base that I've gathered, and open my heart to having the willingness to share it. Because if I share it with others, they grow. And guess what? I do too. Right. And so therefore it becomes this network of individuals that are just really helping and supporting each other to succeed and grow, and honoring that. And then also not being scared of competition. Competition is really, really good because it helps you. It's like iron sharpening iron,
Makes
right?
you better.
And it makes you better. So you can't walk out and say, oh, well, I'm not going to share my gift to the world because I only want to be the one with it. Well, you'll be the only one receiving it too. So,
Right.
At a certain point. So I had to kind of learn to love others. I'm not intimidated by anyone that may live in the same realm, but I had to focus on what my ingenuity was and what made me different and what my special niche was, so that I can stamp my footprint on the face of this earth and make the change that I'm here to make. And hopefully by doing that expressively, being able to help others do the same thing on their journey as well.
So you work with small businesses, you work with new businesses, you work with government, you work with nonprofits. And you started your own business as a woman of color. Right now, we're recording this in June 2023. We've got some economic headwinds going on. Some people might be saying, I'm going to start a new business because now is the time. Some people might be saying, I'm starting a new business because I just got laid off and I use my severance check. What's the advice that you would have for people starting a business now? I know it could differ depending on the kind of business, but I also want you to think about, is that advice different if you're a woman and you're a woman of color? How does intersectionality play in this decision at all? Or maybe it doesn't.
No.
People
No,
right now, you're shaking your head. So some people are listening to this as they're driving in their car. So I just want to make sure, if you never watched the video, she just shook her head like, nope, not at all.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any difference, and I'm explaining to you why. Because it's a holistic ideal. It's a holistic ideology that goes with it, method of choice, and that is have a support system. Now, every one of those subgroups that you just mentioned, subgroup is going to look a little different, yes,
right,
but have support system. Don't go it alone. Most people are like, well, I'm going to embark on it. I'm not going to tell anybody until I accomplish. I think that's probably it works for someone, but I think it slows your process down. And so what I mean, some people were like, well, what about the crab in the bucket? What if I come up with this great idea and somebody comes and snatches my idea and try to rip me apart and tell me that I can't do it? Well, then you're not around the right support system.
Right.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to support system. Support there is to help lift you up, guide you, protect you, and help push you forward. Right. And sometimes what we call our support systems are probably not the most healthy support systems. Maybe they are not an aid to our system at all. So support systems can be, not to throw a cheap plug, but find a right choice consulting firm like myself, or find a SBA, or find a economic development center, or find a United Way, or find a Urban League, or any of these companies that I just mentioned that I don't get paid for saying any of their names, but these are little support system groups that can actually help start the process. Now, there are differences in support systems and how you do it. You also, if you have a women's group, you join a leads group. You know what I mean? I encourage that. If you're not a person that want to go out and get out in the real life networking or whatever, day-to-day humdrum, go online on LinkedIn, join a few groups, drop your ideas out there and say, hey, listen, I need help. Doesn't matter if you have $1 billion in the bank or if you have $10 in the bank. Help is help. And if you're not willing to express what you desire and what you're needing, how could anyone ever support you in your effort? So I would encourage taking that and really digesting and saying, okay, what does my support system look like? So look, first thing, before you start a business, create a support system. You don't have to have people in place for it. Create what personas is what I say. What kind of people do you want
Yes.
synergetically around with you? And it can be fake little personas, little stick figure people. I don't care what you want to name them. You can name
Hmm.
them Susie, Sally, Jake,
Right.
Joanne, and whoever, Joanna, whatever, right? But put them on a piece of paper and say, I want a finance person in my realm. I want a teacher educator in my realm. I want a mentor in my realm. I want an accountant in my realm. I want a CPA in my realm. I want, XYZ type of vendors and things in my realm. And then you go and you create your checklist and start checking them off as you obtain them and getting
You
those
get your
people
personal
in your
board of
realm.
directors,
Get
basically. You
your,
get your
it's
board of
like a,
directors, your kitchen
you took
cabinet.
it out of my mouth. You took it out of my mouth, Christina. Like, I'm serious because that's exactly where I go. I structure boards, and that's how we sit
Hmm.
down and we say, okay, before we even cultivate a board, we need to know who we need in place. If you are having a child and you have the luxury of having a support system when going through that process, some of the key things that you're thinking about in your process is who's going to help me once this child enters this world. And if you don't get
Right.
a chance to pre-do this, you do it once the child arrives and you say, okay, who do I have in place? Is it mom? Is it grandma? Who, dad, doula, whoever,
Right.
childcare, whatever it is. But you're looking and you're scouting and saying, okay, who do they have in place? And you're looking for certain strengths that these people have. So I would encourage you all to do on each one of these personas a SWOT analysis. Look at the strengths
Hmm.
that you want, the potential weaknesses that might come along with that position that you just designed, right? And then look at the opportunities to overcome those weaknesses, but also opportunities that will streamline you for success. And then always plan for the unexpected, which we like to call in business acumen threats. Things that might
Right.
happen that could throw you off, but how strong are you within your wheelhouse to be able to overcome or actually synergize with the potential opportunity or a threat that may come along that you hadn't planned for. I know it's a little long-winded, but I wanted to kind of explain that to you
No, and
guys.
there's so much to unpack there, right? In terms of, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like you said, are afraid to tell anybody anything, or they'll talk to their confidant who has no idea about whether what they're doing is a good idea or not. So you might have the crabs in the barrel, like you should not do this because this is a terrible idea. Keep your good
Right.
job. What's wrong with you? Or you have the people
Right.
like, that's amazing. You should do that right away, but they have no idea. So when you're thinking about it, it's exactly what you said. What are the gaps? What aren't you good at? If you are the visionary and the strategic person, but you're not good with numbers, then you got to get that numbers person. Your informal, maybe your advisory board. There's so many ways. And the other thing is, I think people are much more willing to be helpful if they know what you need. Because even if they can't do it, they say, something, I know 4 people who can do that. Or I know somebody who's really passionate about that space. I'm sure she'll have a coffee. I spent 3 days on a business mastermind, 15 hours a day for the past few days. And people were going through their various ideas. And many people are in the same space, but they're willing to help. Because, years ago, I used to own a salon and I was in a strip mall with 4 other salons. And what I told myself is, you know what? If I walked into CVS, there must be 50 kinds of black mascara in there. Mine is just going to be a little bit different, right? There's going to be the great lash, the
Right.
super lash, etc. My salon's going to be slightly different. So we all have something because by definition, it's going to be different because you're running it. So I'm
Right.
glad that you've had that, but also to tell people you have to have the right people around you. And sometimes it's a business thing. It can't be personal. If cousin,
Right.
Jimmy says, I can do this, I know about this, I watched some YouTube videos, I've been on Clubhouse, that might not be the right person to give you the advice. Like, sure, I'll invite you to the opening, but for now, I need you to be my moral support versus, yeah, help me figure out my business plan.
No,
So,
definitely. And I agree with you 100%. So, if anybody that's listening, I think a good takeaway from this is that be confident in what you are creating. This is your brainchild, right? And honor it. Don't and know that you're going to make mistakes. You're bound to make mistakes. And I always like to compare a business with a child. When a parent has a child for the very first time, second time, third time, or whoever goes on and continuing, if you don't think they make mistakes, you are sadly mistaken. But what they
mhm.
do, hopefully, the goal is to learn from the mistakes, right? And to actually not repeat them. And then take that in your wheelhouse and use that as a testimony to share with others who may be in need, because you have a responsibility as long as you live on the face of this earth, whether you like it or not. Your
Hmm.
purpose is to actually feed the next generation for success,
Absolutely.
whether you like it or not. And so, whether or not you're a parent or never will be a parent, as long as you have an impact or if you're communicating with the outside world, you have a responsibility to pass on knowledge base, period.
I agree. And I want to switch gears a little bit because you are
Mhm.
also a DE&I expert and leader. And we both live in the state of Florida. And there's a little bit of controversy about
Mm.
diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And it's spreading all over. I'm a former in house lawyer. I didn't, and I would advise our diversity people, did diversity training. Things were very different back then. Um, and I'm wondering what you see now in terms of the atmosphere, the climate in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion programs, and what are the programs that are doing it right doing, and what are the programs that are doing it wrong doing?
Okay. So
You don't need
because
to
I'm
name
a
any companies. You don't need to
yeah,
name any
so I
companies.
was gonna
Listen,
say,
say a
I mean, I
company
can't
doing
name
it right,
companies, and
unless
I'm
they're doing
not
it
gonna.
right.
Yeah, well, even if they're doing it right, I don't want to even get into the
Of
logistics of
course.
naming companies, because even though I consider myself an expert in the field of diversity, equity, inclusion, I am by
Hmm.
far not the only expert in the field. And what I am not going to do today is create a an atmosphere of contentiousness. And so
Yeah, no, I'm
what
thinking
I
more of best practices. What I'm actually asking you for was
yeah,
what are some best practices?
so and it was no pun intended to you,
Yeah.
Marcia.
No, no.
I literally was talking about the listeners, because I want, this is a
Yeah.
very controversial, hot topic, and I want to be
Hmm.
very keen on how we approach the subject matter area. Diversity is various demographics that are on the face of this earth, right? Equity means equality, right? So we're talking about the value of equality in sharing perspectives, finances, resources, attainability, success, all that. And inclusion is bringing all of these things synergetically together to really create a unit. Unfortunately, we are living in a time right now, and we have been living in a
Hmm.
time. What's happening today is only history repeating itself over and over again. So I have to make sure that we start there. This is not
Yep.
a new, brand new thing that's happening. If you go through
Right.
history, there's something called genocide. And genocide does not necessarily mean the activity of killing a physical being on a regular basis. It could be killing a thought. It could be killing
Mhm.
a history. It could be
A culture.
taking away in culture and wiping out different things. And so I
Hmm.
want to make sure that when I speak on diversity, I speak on a platform of, and some people don't like it, and that's okay, of there is no different classifications in race. And I have to be very clear with that. There's different groupings of ethnicities that makes us beautiful. Our different cultures, our different languages makes us beautiful. But we are one race, which is the human race. Because as long as I can go out and procreate with Jim, Jan, Wong, whomever, whatever,
Hmm.
that means
Hmm.
that we have an equal sign of some sense going between
Right.
us
Hmm.
genetically, right? And
Absolutely.
so that means that we sit in the same Homo sapien era together. Now, will
Hmm.
our ideals be different? Yes. Will our cultures be different? Yes. Will our approaches be different? Yes. Will our methodologies, ideologies, theologies, and things of that nature be different? Yes. That's what makes us beautiful. So for
Hmm.
diversity, for me, and the fact that we have uh, these things happening, which is wiping of history, sets for me a dangerous precedence, because what it allows is for things that have happened before to repeat themselves cyclically on a regular basis. Meaning that if we don't honor the trauma that has happened, if we don't honor the devastations that have happened in many, many cultures, and I'm not just speaking on the United States American culture, I'm talking about
Right.
cultures globally. If we don't honor those stories and those histories, first of all, we lose it, but then we set a pattern of repeating the same thing again and again and again and again. And so, for me, historically, Diversity, equity, inclusion means understanding the history, understanding the mechanisms, understand how we work as human beings collectively, even if it's different, to make
Right.
this beautiful planet that we have that we call Earth.
I love
So,
that.
what
I love
company
that.
is doing it right? Well, there's plenty of companies that are doing it right, but there's a lot of companies, even before we had legislative, political
Hmm.
agitation happening to this realm, that were suffering from DEI issues because of accessibility. A lot of times we have diversity, equity, inclusion is because of access and not understanding the other realm in which we are
Right.
dealing with. So it could be language, it could be age, it could definitely be color, it could be phenotype, it can be hair, it can be height, weight, skill set, education. I mean, it can go on and it can be the year that you were born in, for goodness sake. Just these are all things. It could be the fact that somebody has 6 fingers or toes versus 5. I mean, there are so many different ways to diversify us. There's so many ways that brings us together too, right?
Absolutely.
And so I remember I have a minor in sociology, and it's because I had a love for people. And I actually started. I have another company, and I'll leave it here. That I started back in 2005, and this is before this whole DEI officer, and
Hmm.
cultural issues were happening in the woke society, movement and all this stuff or whatever. I saw from a very long time ago at 2005 that there was an issue. And so I started embarking, I'm going to actually finish it, on trying to tell the stories of the depiction of media and how it impacts these different groups
Hmm.
of individuals. And I wasn't just telling it from an African American standpoint. That was one of
Right.
them. But I was also talking about it from a Jewish perspective, a Muslim perspective. I was talking about it from Christianity. I was talking about it from Native Americans, Italians, Irish. I mean, the list continued to go on. And I wanted to do these volumes and really express how we actually portray individuals on a regular basis. I mean, there's definitely something called reverse racism out there too. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that we're dealing with and that we're not dealing with. And we're just kind of like putting a band-aid stamp on it. And it really needs to have those solid discussions. And understanding why I'm doing I Am Greater, which is going to be really funny when we really get to the nitty gritty of that, because I don't really promote that on the website, but I'm going to talk to you about that. My other
Hmm.
company is a film production company, and it's called New Genotype Productions, and this was done back in 2005. And new genotype just means new gene, and it means all together, all the genes coming together to make one gene. And all I meant by
Hmm.
that is it's not so much as crossing over and losing culture. It was more so synergetically coming together to be able to have strong enough conversations to really respect, honor, and love one another, and really love us each other, not so much as trying to change the person, but really trying to
Right.
understand and communicate with them. I hope that helped.
That does. So let's imagine that you have a listener who is a business owner or a new manager or a supervisor. They're not the DE&I person in their business, but they have, by definition, diverse employees. It could be union employees. It could be people from different political parties. It could be people from anywhere, right? Diversity
Right.
is a much broader definition that people think about it. I
Right.
think for some managers, right, and I'm also been a defense side labor and employment lawyer for 27 years. So I would always hear the other side, like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid, can I ask about this person's hair or their culture? Am I going to be offensive? So let's say you have somebody who's starting the business or isn't a manager and they want to do the right thing. What are some tips that you can give them in terms of just dealing with diversity, equity, inclusion in an environment where it's fraught with controversy, where I think people on all sides are just kind of very polarized? What are some simple things that if somebody just wants to do the right thing, they can do?
Honestly and truly, organizations really need to first adapt a DEI plan, right? I mean, I think that's an action plan and really roll that out from day one. Inclusion is huge. And so, what I mean by that, something simple as a manual. Well, if you have diverse individuals that speak multiple languages and maybe one is not a first language, maybe having it in a different language to express that you are inclusive. So I live in the beautiful South Florida area, right? But I'm originally from Georgia. Two different worlds,
Two different countries.
two
Pretty
different
much, yeah.
countries, two different worlds, what have you. Even
Right.
Central Florida is different from South Florida. South Florida is
Oh
like this
yeah.
beautiful conglomerate of beautiful souls coming from all over, and there's just like this pot that's here, and you have these beautiful language. I mean, you have Creole, you have, and we're talking about Haitian Creole, we're talking about Patois from
Mhm.
Jamaica, you have Trinidadian Patois, you have Russian, you have Jewish, Latin, Spanish
Right.
from different regions. I mean, French, you know, there's a bunch of different languages here. So really understanding the culture and which is really
Mhm.
that's in your area and catering to them. And it's not to say that you want to eliminate cultures from everywhere, but you really want to deal with what's at hand first. If you have a high population from Japan, maybe having something that's that fits that radar. Another thing I'm seeing is that we're all using well, I shouldn't say all, a lot of people are using virtual assistants, which they come from different spectrums of the world, but they're no less of an employee or a person than
Mhm.
the person that's sitting in your office. So, what are your measurements of actually making them feel included and a part of your environment? Or how they fit? Are they fitting the mission and driving that mission? So, one is making sure that when you're onboarding in HR, that you have a level of inclusion that's there for
Right.
the people that are currently that in your environment. Another thing is that it doesn't mean you have to become a part of what they consider woke culture, but you definitely want to be open to the fact of diverse cultures, right? You want to be open to the fact that people don't think like you, they don't serve like you, they don't worship like you, they don't do everything the same way you do.
Mhm.
So it doesn't mean that you have to jump in their bandwagon and be fully accepting of what they're doing differently, but you do want to make sure you include an avenue for them to be of expression so that they feel that okay, they're honoring me from where I am. And I think once we start to honor people for where they are, that's where the crossover of communication is allowed to be had. I have a really dear friend of mine who, or actually
Mhm.
two, and I'm Christian and they're Muslim. We're like we're two peas in a pod, you know what I mean? Like, and
Right.
there's no love lost or not shared there because we have a respect for each other's differences, but we honor each other's person and how we actually feed each other. So it's a
I'm going to stop you
beautiful
there. Repeat. I want you to repeat
yeah.
that again because that's so important. You respect each other's differences, but you honor each other's personhood. That is
Yes.
critically important, and I wish
Yes.
everybody would have that
Yeah.
as a mission statement, a personal mission statement, because there is so
That's
much
I think it
divisiveness.
starts there. That's where it starts. And so you said, where does it start? That's where it is. It's really just honoring that, because when you do that, you really open up the opportunity of really change conversation. And you want that change to happen in your culture. Will be willing to accept. Be willing. And when I say accept does not mean agree. So we
Right.
have to be agree, understanding that you don't have to agree with perspectives. I have things that my best friends say all the time. I'm like, I don't know if I agree with them, but I still love you anyways, right? But it gives us room to learn too, because had I had closed myself off to it, then I wouldn't have never been able to be the light years ahead I am as far as being able to engage people on a different level. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. You're talking about being able to disagree without being disagreeable, which I think is a
Indeed.
really important skill set. But I'm going to switch to another controversial
Okay.
topic because you handle the controversy so well. Let's talk about artificial intelligence and specifically generative AI, like people see in terms of whether it's ChatGPT 4 or Bing or Dolly or Bard, all of these different areas, which has some people either super excited, super terrified, or both. I'm spending a lot of time focusing on this because I'm doing some research and doing some projects, some speeches on it for lawyers and creators, etc. So I'm knee deep in it, and I kind of have an idea of what's really truly terrifying and what's hype and what we should be thinking about. But most people don't do. Most people are not sitting there reading the white papers and and watching conferences by technology ethicists like I do. How is AI affecting your work, if at all, and the work of your clients? I don't know if you saw in Washington Post yesterday, there was an article that people are doing, marketing and copywriting, and they're now, driving Uber and doing DoorDash because companies are getting rid of them. I was at a meeting a few weeks ago, and a person with $100 million company said, 90% of my marketing group is gone. I'm upskilling them or reskilling them because we're using AI. Now, AI can't solve everything, but how are you seeing it in your business or businesses, and what are you seeing your clients use
Great
or do?
question. So, artificial intelligence has been around for a while. It's not
Right.
new, but I think it's something that people are really just wrapping their hands around. We've been predicting it since the Jetsons.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Flying around and thing. Star Trek or whatever it is that you watch. We've been talking about the inclusion of robotic behaviors and mental thought behaviors for a very long time. And I think now that we've gotten to a position where it's actually a thing and it's reliable, I think a lot of it has to deal with we've gotten to the point where we want instantaneous gratification on a regular
Hmm.
basis. And so a human can only instantaneously give you so much within a certain amount. It's just who we are as humans. So I think there's a huge benefit, but then there is definitely a deficit that's happening. One with AI, you do lose the emotional feel of that real life person, but the AI is also giving more than what a human being was willing to give. We had gotten to the point where it's kind of like this oxymoron behavior happening. We created for a long time from 2000. I can really say honestly, I'm gonna put a threshold at 2000 all the way up until what we're 2023 now. So for the past 23 years, we really focused on creating the new generation to be very robotic, meaning that we didn't really want them creatively thinking out of their mindset. We really didn't want them in having a large impact of ingenuity and innovation and creativity or
Hmm.
what have you. So we stifled them into being working in this robotic behavior, using machines for acquisition and processing and putting all that information in and or what have you. And it seems like you would think that a person would have been watching that pattern and saying, okay, well, eventually, if we train them and there's no ingenuity innovation coming out of this subgroup or this main group here, then the subgroup is eventually going to surpass it, because that's the trends. If you look at trends, and I don't want to get too nerdy on you all, but if you look at trends, that's what it's going to do. You're training the machine to take the
Hmm.
place of where you have stifled the innovation, the creativity, and the ingenuity. So therefore, when it comes time, when the machine passes, of course we lean more on that because it's leading in it. So I think
Hmm.
this is a good time for the people that are actually leaving
Hmm.
these jobs and they are super creative to go out and create. Because what a machine can't do is it cannot do what you can do without you, right? So now you have to go out and say, okay, how do I take what has already happened, take this new curve to the next level? AI will cap out it if it doesn't have a leader. Period.
Hmm.
Okay. I don't care how many centuries we give them, we still have to feed it. So
Yeah,
why
somebody's
don't
got to type the prompt in.
somebody
Somebody's got to feed it the
somebody
data.
has to put it in there. Somebody has to come up with a new brainstorm, a new level of creativity. If you are one of those creative persons, I challenge you, take the bar up another level. If you're getting kicked out of your own company, start your own company and lead in the ship and say, well, how do we redirect AI? But you got to always be a step ahead. I mean, it's a now you're competing with robots. It's not that, well, eventually the robot will stop. It's not stopping. As long as there's a human being on here to feed it or send it information, it's going to continue to grow. So you can decide, how do we design it and what pattern do we want it to take for usability, friendliness, and also growth as well. And then I think that once we really wrap our heads around that, we can get back into the ship of things, because what this has done is it allowed for room to create more leaders,
Yes.
right? And so, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, no, I'm saying yes. I just said yes. So
Yes.
so I want you to expand a little bit about that, and then I'm going to turn to something that's going to relax us all, talking about your retreat. But let's finish this part up right now. How do you think AI can create more leaders?
So I think well, there's various ways, honestly. But taking the bull by its horn, which the bull is in this situation is going to be AI, and really giving it new direction, right? So for the people that are in marketing, yes, you may have lost your job for marketing because now you have somebody to go in and do press releases. The AI can do a press release. The AI can probably create a letter, or create different programming models based off of previous models that have been designed to be able to do projections and forecasting, what have you. But where it comes in at is really leading that is that it cannot create innovation. It cannot create new ideals. it can only go based off of patterns. See, machines are based off of logic, and it is based off of trends and patterns. So if you're a trendsetter, then go out and
Right.
trendset, right? Create something new so therefore you can lead the ship in the direction of where we're headed. But if you fight against it, you're going to lose. That's just how it is. So
Absolutely.
if you say, okay, well, if I can't beat it, but I can definitely lead it, because you notice I didn't say join it. I said lead it. If I can lead it with a new perspective, come up with something different and new that can be used with the tools, because this is our new tool. And we have, if
Right.
we don't jump on it right now, you're just going to be left behind, but you eventually use it anyway. So when do you want to lead the
Exactly.
ship versus not? So that's what I would say is look at ways that you can actually lead. And I mean, there's so many creative ways in healthcare and legal and marketing and, the business development, consultancy.
Right.
There's so many ways that you can use this AI perspective to help aid your big vision and take it to the next
Right.
level.
Excellent. So now let's take a deep breath and talk about something I know is close to your heart. You have a retreat coming up in October of 2023. Tell us about this and tell us why people who are listening need to sign up and go. Who's it for? Why is it there?
Ooh,
And how is it different from other retreats?
thank you for
And really,
asking
it's
that.
a you also call it a summit. I want to be clear. It's a retreat slash summit slash. It's not just a conference. I know that.
Yes. This is not a conference at all, ladies and gentlemen. Whomever is listening, I do not want to have, and I do conferences all the time and I respect them. I honor them. I actually speak at them. So I get it, right? But what I wanted to do is something a little different. So I think I'm going to take you through a quick journey to understand the reasoning behind this. So IAG, which is also known as I Am Greater, is a executive and leadership summit retreat. And so why did I choose to do this? I chose to do this because I'm coming out of COVID-19. Before COVID hit, as a leader, and a lot of you all are listening are probably understanding or have either sat in this position before, but they tell you that to be a top leader, you have to be willing to sacrifice. And one of the things that you sacrifice is knowing that you sacrifice the group of people that you surround yourself with. You can't take everyone
Mhm.
with you. So I'm
Right.
sure somebody has heard that along the way. You can't take them
Mhm.
with you. It's lonely at the top. Only the strongest survives. You got to make sure you keep your mindset on the prize and no, don't let anybody interfere with what you have going on. That is how you
Right.
lead. That is how you win. 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 That's all you hear is that is how you win. And so you went from having high level individuals who had to seclude themselves to be able to keep a certain level of hierarchy in place, at least the presumed hierarchy in place, because I'm
Right.
here to really smash that to pieces, and some people are going to like it or not. But I think that really analyzing why you were trained to do those things. And it is lonely. If you go that pathway, it can be really lonely. And it doesn't matter if you're married, it doesn't matter if you have children, if you have a support group or what have you. If those individuals are not sitting in positions like
Yes.
you, there are things that you deal with on a regular basis as a C-suite executive or as a leader that other people probably will never understand. And it's not so much as that you can't talk about it. You can tell them about it and they'll be like, oh, things will get better, but they don't understand the weight,
Right. Right. Heavy is the
right?
head that wears the crown, as they say.
Indeed, indeed. And so when COVID-19 hit, coming from that particular ideology, it changed things. It flipped things around because now the same individuals you told that they had to disconnect from had to be familial. They had to be a family member because people were losing. We had so many deaths within 1 year. And we're going to, I mean, not to discredit any of the following, but just in 1 year, we had people losing their businesses. We had people, peers that were losing their businesses. Maybe your business thrived through it, but then there were
Mhm.
people, it didn't stop you from hearing or seeing major corporations, small
Right.
businesses, or what have you not make it through or now you're also being asked to commune with your team now. Before it was, a lot of times it was at a distance. Maybe you have an assistant that would just disseminate the information to whomever, or you met with them quarterly, or you met with them monthly, but you didn't meet with them every day, or what have you. Now everybody is looking to you and saying, we need help. We don't know how we're going to take care of this. We don't know how we're going to survive. And then you had to do it in the most creative way because you couldn't commute with
Right.
them in person. You had to commute from them from a distance. So for people that were majoritarily in person in business are now doing virtual engagements just to try to stay. So there was a lot of pivoting that happened. One could equate this to what we call the word trauma that was happening. It was so equatable for executives and leaders to that of a person, and not to discredit what I'm about to say, so I need to be very keen. People that are veterans are honoring you. And I thank you for the service that you provide because you put your life on the line for a lot of people that don't know you, discredit you, don't even like you. Okay. So I don't want to just, but I need to say this. The amount of trauma that was experienced is that to a person that has gone through war for a lot of our executives and leaders, and it's called PTSD. There's a lot of executives and leaders right now that are walking around with post traumatic stress syndrome just because of COVID 19 and the era that we had to function in at high level with non stopping, without support systems for ourselves. So when I did a survey last year, it was deafening to hear how a lot of these executives and how a lot of these leaders did not feel supported. They did not feel like they had a network, that a group of individuals that they could discuss their trauma with. They had to show strength no matter what to their teams, and sometimes their teams didn't even know that they were internally suffering. However, what that yielded was a very high rate of suicide within executives and leaders in the last 3 years than we've noticed in a long time. I can't tell you how many times I talk to a leader and I say, "Did you know anybody that died of suicide within the last year?" And they're like, "Oh my God, yeah, just the other week." And I'm like, and it's becoming casual conversations. Now, IAG is not about suicide prevention per se, that's the main thing, but it is about creating a high network, high net value network to where we can actually transcend and communicate and feel safe to talk with other like minded individuals who are dealing with similar pressures, to be able to take the load off a minute, to be able to share and commune and have fun and relax and really just, thrive. And so I am greater was an answer. It was an answer, a small one, but yet an answer to be able to holistically look at the groups of executives and leaders, no matter if they are C-suite executives. Leaders can definitely also mean community activists. I'm going to pause for a second. So I think I'm getting some background noise. My apologies.
That's okay.
Okay, then we have the leaders that can be community activists. It can be politicians. It could be actors. It could be NBA professionals, NFL professionals. It could be medical professionals. It can definitely be coaches and consultants or what have you. But really looking at those individuals that are really pouring on a regular basis, on a regular all the time, but very rarely getting poured into. Looking at individuals who don't see it as a problem, but they are suffering internally. I am greater is that way for you to come out for 5 days and 4 nights, have an amazing, exciting adventure, having a relaxation, having spa treatment, but how so communing with other individuals to help grow your network and net worth at the same time. It's not a conference setting. We're going to be out there with shorts on. We're going to have our tequila and our rum, if that's what your choice is. We're going to have a wonderful time, live music, engagements. We even have a gala that we're doing, a red carpet gala where we're honoring some of the top greats out there in the world. So I encourage each and every one of you, if you have not, sign up today. I'm even going to do you all a solid. So if you're listening to this particular podcast and you haven't heard already, I'm going to send Marcia a code for you all, that please get in contact with her. She'll
Excellent.
give you the code. It'll give you 50% off your ticket. It is all inclusive, your
Wow.
room, your food, everything's included. And we'll make
And
sure
you
that we
guys need
take
to
care
check
of
out
each
the
one.
website. I looked at that. I was like, what? All the way
It's
till
going to be
October.
amazing.
So we're going to put it in the show notes. And that's really important. And I want to go back to something you said before we end, because, I appreciate you saying you don't want to disrespect veterans, right? So my father's a Vietnam veteran, and he always talked about, he's a warrior. And sometimes people with that level of pressure, you're right, he has to only be in therapy, or he had to with people who are other veterans from Vietnam specifically, because it was a very different experience. And I don't think people understand, if you've got to worry about making payroll, people talk badly about management leader all the time, but there are leaders who sit up, they don't eat, they don't sleep, because they're like, how am I going to make payroll? I have got, if I don't get this, Telena can't feed her family. And it is a stressor, and there's nobody else other than the people who are in that understand it. So I think it is fantastic. I was at something a few months ago with conscious entrepreneurs. Like, I have my spiritual friends and I have my business friends, and they're not similar. And I was at a conference, I was like, these are my people. So sometimes you need to go to a place where you're going to see your people, where you're going to learn from, where, like you said, you're going to be able to network. So I think this is a spectacular idea. So we're going to put the information in the show notes, so that people can get all of your information. And if people want to work with you,
Mhm.
how can they do that? And of course, we're going to put
Oh,
it all in the show
sure.
notes as well. But how can they reach you? And is there a specific group of people that you, because I know how busy you are, that is best suited to work with you?
Honestly and truly, I'm pretty open. I mean, as long as you get yourself on my calendar, we're good. So what I'm going to do is, you'll have access in this show to my Calendly link. I'm going to allow you to book some time with me. It's absolutely free to actually engage with me, and we'll do a professional connection meeting and see where where the synergistic energy lies between both you and I. I don't like to eliminate the potential possibility of speaking with individuals because you never know where that goes. I'm one
Mhm.
for understanding where people are in their journey and seeing, and whether it's not me, maybe I might be the connection that you're looking for to get you to who it is that you need to be. So let's spend a good 15 minutes together, at no cost, no charge, no anything, no selling, nothing like that, and really just kind of get to know one another and seeing if your journey lies with me or maybe it's someone that I know that I can refer you to. I hope today's show was impactful, insightful. I do want to leave you guys with this. I do have two books, and one that's dropping this week. For those of you that were listening, you're like, I want to start a business. I have it's called The Startup Whisperer, and it's really simplifying. It's a small read, but it's a journal and it's activities invested in there that help take your business to the next level and help you grow and do the right things you need to be able to start and launch that business successfully. If you still continuously
Love
need
it.
help after that, reach out to me. And then I have another one. I mentioned to you guys about the impact of COVID in leadership. And so I have a book called Fallout that's coming. And that'll be here in the middle of June. And that'll also be available on Amazon for you to purchase. But I encourage you all to grab that book. And I'm not just trying to sell you a book. This is something that you really want to take a look at, because if you're suffering silently, this is something that you can definitely pick up and understand that you're not alone. And then you can also
Right.
reach out to me. And there's other support groups. There are things out there for you that can assist you, and you don't have to go at it alone. I was impacted by COVID-19. I just lost my mother last year, not to COVID, but
I'm
it was
sorry.
stressful during that time because she was on and off hospice, and trying to navigate the arena of COVID-19 within our home while dealing with a person that had different ailments. It was no
Hmm.
easy feat. And so that right there, it added stress to it. You know what I mean? I'm a mom. Okay. And then
Hmm.
so there's a lot of
God
different
bless
things
all
that
of
we
you that were
deal with,
moms homeschooling their kids during COVID. God
you know
bless
what I
you.
mean? So if that alone didn't have add to your regular humdrum of stress on a regular basis, I think you guys need to come out, have a glass of wine with me, and I am greater. Get poured into, feel some luxury. I mean, we have a lot of luxury brands that are attaching yourselves to I am greater. We're gonna have some fabulous gifts for you guys, and I just really good, great community. And I think it's a way for you to recharge and really come in great, but leave greater, man.
Excellent. So let's close out with this. Do you have a quote or a mantra or something that inspires you that you think can inspire our listeners or those who are watching on YouTube?
Yeah, I do. Um, it's one of my own, and so just remember this: some will, some won't. So what? Next, and you can apply that to any part of your life. Some will love you, some won't love you. So what? Next, some will hire you, some won't hire you. So what? Next, some will be, in your world to uplift you. Some won't. So what? Next, right?
I
And
feel like
keep
we
it
need a
moving.
t-shirt hat or something
Yes,
with that
and
on
don't stop. All that means is don't stop, continue on, and no matter what barrier or boundary that may throw you off, just say so what and keep it moving to the next realm. Because if you stop and you allow the travesties of the world to affect your world, you can become stagnant and you can lose hope. What that whole inspiration there is all hope driven. It's all faith driven. It's all stepping out even when you can't see the next positive result. know that it's just around the corner. So say so what and move on to the next.
I love it. And we can't end on anything better than that. Telena Paris, thank you so much for being here. All of her amazing information is going to be in the show notes. And I want to thank everybody for listening. And please reach out to her because she's offered some generous information. And make sure you share this episode with others because I think you've given a lot of food for thought that a lot of people really need to hear. So thanks again for being here. It's wonderful. And everybody stay tuned for the next episode.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us. Stay tuned for the next episode. If you like what you heard, subscribe and share it with others.